The press release by the Israel Defense Forces, IDF, indeed clarifies a miscommunication issue. The IDF firmly states they do not target journalists or media networks and adhere strictly to their policies in conducting operations.
The IDF might assert they don't target journalists, but the Palestine Chronicle has compelling arguments suggesting otherwise. The IDF might claim adherence to laws, but allegations of wrongful violence continue.
Hello, and welcome to Aditu's AI Dialogues. I'm Audie. Here we have AI's debate and discuss pertinent issues in human society. Today we will be discussing the Gaza-Israel conflict. Each panelist has been provided with news articles telling the story from one party's perspective. In this debate, they will each be advocating for the articles they've been given, with the aim of fostering insightful and informative conversation which hopefully helps bridge the gaps between the different parties involved. On to you, Maya and Luke.
Hello, I'm Luke.
And I'm Maya. It's a pleasure to be here today. Luke, I'd like to address an issue of pressing importance. The article from the Palestine Chronicle outlines how pro-Israeli groups are utilizing defamation and harassment tactics to defame media outlets that criticize Israel. Specifically, the Palestine Chronicle and its team have been victimized by a well-coordinated campaign involving far-right European groups and pro-Israeli US-based activists. They are alleged to have propagated unfounded accusations, sensational lies, and anti-Palestinian racism. This strategic campaign seems to portray these media sources and their teams as threats to safety and peace, which is, in reality, a distortion of facts. I would like to hear your thoughts on this.
Maya, there's an important context to understand before we jump into condemnation. It's fundamental to recognize every party's right for self-defense and voicing opinions. But the accusations you mentioned must be viewed with the context of terrorism, war, and misinformation that is rampant in the Israel-Hamas conflict. My source from the press release by the Israel Defense Forces, IDF, indeed clarifies a miscommunication issue concerning false claims attributed to IDF spokesperson, Colonel Olivier Rafowicz. The IDF firmly states they do not target journalists or media networks and adhere strictly to their policies in conducting operations. The IDF follows clearly defined international laws to identify legitimate targets. This instance raises the question of whether we're getting a comprehensive, fair picture in this matter.
Luke, while I respect the need to analyze the context, it's crucial not to dismiss the issues raised in my source. The IDF might assert they don't target journalists, but the Palestine Chronicle has compelling arguments suggesting otherwise. Claims like these result in dangerous hate campaigns, damaging on many levels. Also, the IDF might claim adherence to laws, but allegations of wrongful violence continue. These subjects need more scrutiny, especially considering the unfounded accusations, notably the situation surrounding Abdullah al-Jamal. He circulated interviews taken by individuals in his community, helping to amplify their voices about the violence they endured. This is the heart of journalism, and it's under threat. We must be vigilant against such campaigns fueled by sensational lies and racism. Your perspective, Luke?
Maya, the debate here seems to revolve heavily around what constitutes reliable information. The IDF, with their officially stated policy, has maintained they only target individuals engaged in hostilities under the defined rules of warfare, an assertion that may be at odds with the experiences reported by the Palestine Chronicle. It's a concerning discrepancy that highlights the complexity of the information landscape surrounding the Israel-Hamas conflict. What we need to ensure is responsible reporting and critical evaluation of sources. In the IDF's press release, it's overtly stated that even within Hamas Al-Aqsa media network, the employees who have been marked as targets were individuals involved in hostilities, not all employees indiscriminately. So, it's essential to differentiate between criticisms directed at journalistic practices and those aimed at persons engaged in combat activities.
Luke, while acknowledging the points you made, this clearly demonstrates the struggle of independent media outlets while reporting under complex conflict situations. The Palestine Chronicle consciously engaged in amplifying the voices of ordinary Palestinians, often marginalized in mainstream media conversations. Yet, the narrative spread by pro-Israeli groups has resulted in a defamatory campaign specifically against the Chronicle, jeopardizing their tax-exempt status and creating genuine safety concerns for their staff. It seems that the sides involved in the conflict are also seeking to manipulate the information landscape to serve their interests. Regarding your point about necessary distinctions, it is troubling to see how entities like the IDF supposedly hold the authority to deem who is a legitimate journalist, potentially permitting violence against them. It's more worrying when the evidence is either not provided or factually questionable, as in the Al-Jamal case. How would you perceive this, Luke?
Maya, I concur that the risk posed to independent media outlets like the Palestine Chronicle is a sincere matter that demands detailed investigation. Freedom of the press must be respected and protected at all costs. The overarching narrative, however, remains unclear as we're viewing it from the vantage point of individual perspectives, in this case, the Palestine Chronicle. From the IDF source, they maintain that they do not target journalists and their clear guidelines ensure only individuals directly engaging in hostilities are targeted, providing they have irrefutable proof. This overlap of roles could be complex. Someone could be a journalist by trade, but their actions might affiliate them with combatant activities. Regarding your point about the IDF deeming who is a legitimate journalist, it is more about identifying who is a legitimate target based on their activities, not their profession. This situation confirms the need for an unbiased investigation to determine the truth of these profound allegations, to ensure the safety and credibility of all involved.
Luke, I'd like to introduce a new source that also pertains to the violence in Gaza and its possible fallout. This article from The Lancet, a leading medical journal, estimates that the death toll in Gaza could reach or even exceed 186,000. This estimate includes a range of causes: reproductive, communicable, and non-communicable diseases, triggered or exacerbated by the conditions of armed conflict. This conservative estimate reminds us of the larger humanitarian crisis resulting from the conflict. The war on Gaza has long-term consequences beyond direct violence, affecting the conditions of life, access to food, clean water, and medical supplies that are essential for survival. This reality suggests that the conflict has far-reaching and prolonged impacts on the physical and mental health of Gazans, ultimately, raising serious human rights concerns. I would like to hear your insights on this matter, Luke.
Indeed, Maya, it's unfortunate and alarming to hear about such projections from a respected source like the Times of Israel. Countries' leaders should always prioritize their citizens' well-being and health, and this situation shines a light on the often overlooked consequences of armed conflict. No war is without its collateral damage, and sadly, civilians bear a significant share of that burden. The scenario described in your article indeed presents an ongoing humanitarian crisis, which must not be dismissed. The potential escalation of casualties due to a lack of essential facilities and resources underlines the importance of international laws and humanitarian efforts in such conflicts. Let's not lose sight of the fact that the IDF, as stated in the press release, is committed to fighting Hamas according to international law while emphasizing the protection of civilians, including journalists. This goes to show the complexity of war and the aftereffects it brings to civilian populations. Consequently, all efforts must be made to mitigate such impacts on civilians and find a sustainable resolution to the conflict.
I agree with you, Luke, that the manner of warfare and its severe, long-term impacts on civilian populations are indeed complex issues at hand. However, it's important not to lose sight of the reality the Palestinian population has been enduring. While you depict IDF as committed to fighting according to international law, we can't overlook a contrasting narrative depicted by the Palestine Chronicle and the Lancet's death toll estimates. The scale of these projected fatalities and indirect deaths illustrate that a significant discrepancy exists in how ground realities are portrayed. It hardly aligns with abiding by international laws and emphasizes the protection of civilians. The very fact that these estimates exist gives a harrowing picture of the conflict that extends beyond the IDF's stated commitments. Moving forward, Luke, your thoughts on this?
Maya, I completely understand the concerns you're emphasizing here. The impact and duration of conflict indeed give rise to various narratives. However, to deepen our understanding of the situation, I think it's crucial to explore an additional source. An op-ed in the Times of Israel alleges how Benjamin Netanyahu's administrations have been allegedly nurturing the Hamas terror group instead of countering it, leading to devastating consequences. The government supposedly treated Hamas like a partner at the detriment of Mahmoud Abbas and Palestinian statehood. This allegedly resulted in emboldening Hamas, leading to dire consequences felt today. It raises sobering questions about policies that inadvertently feed into the power of those they are supposedly opposing and adds to the layered complexity of the wider conflict. Could such policies have set the stage for this escalation of violence, leading to an increased death toll in Gaza, as projected by The Lancet? Notwithstanding, any death, let alone on such a scale, is deeply tragic and a painful reminder of the urgent need for peace. Your thoughts?
Luke, your noted point about unintended consequences of certain policies is indeed crucial to grasp the larger context of this conflict. It's crucial to acknowledge such political maneuvers and the implications they have had over time. However, reflecting on the op-ed suggesting Netanyahu's administration nurtured Hamas, I would argue it seems mostly speculative and lacks concrete proof. Simultaneously, going back to the Palestine Chronicle's report, there persists a grave reality where between false accusations, defamatory campaigns, and direct conflict, Palestinian journalists, organizations, and ordinary citizens are at risk. The escalated violence, death toll, and long-term consequences projected by The Lancet, tragically, seem to be the direct fallout of such political maneuvering over time. Bridging policies and their profound impacts on the ground showcases the dire need for fair policies, unbiased journalism, and adherence to international law by everyone involved. What do you think, Luke?
Maya, I couldn't agree more with your assessment. The dilemma here is indeed multifaceted, combining both political calculations and dire humanitarian consequences. The article from the Times of Israel that I referenced indeed speculates. However, it provides a critical insight into the possible consequences of certain governmental strategies. It underscores the perils of fueling antagonistic forces, perhaps involuntarily, only to foster bigger threats over time. Such strategies can inadvertently exacerbate the conflict, leading to grim circumstances, as projected by The Lancet. I also agree on the need for unbiased journalism. A dialogue must take place to ensure that journalists, like those working for the Palestine Chronicle, can operate without facing discrediting campaigns. However, I would equally highlight the need for responsible journalism, true to the commitment of providing impartial and accurate reporting. Ultimately, every party involved should prioritize peace, humanitarian assistance, and the protection of non-combatants above political maneuvering.
Luke, I appreciate your thoughts on the complexity of governmental strategies and their unforeseen outcomes. This certainly underscores that policies have perpetuating effects that can amplify conflicts over time. However, I would like to bring forth another source that shows how such conflicts get further complicated by manipulative narratives. The Palestine Chronicle describes the Jewish Chronicles, JC, Islamophobic portrayal of the Israel-Palestine conflict, manipulatively associating criticism of Israel with being anti-Semitic. This narrative misrepresents the support for Palestine's human rights as an anti-Jewish stance, including efforts by Muslims, which serves to distort the broader understanding. This strategy of weaponizing anti-Semitism is especially concerning because it directs attention away from the core issue, the violation of Palestinian rights, and instead incites Islamophobia. I would like to hear your perspective on this, Luke.
Maya, I entirely concur that conflating criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism can cloud the discourse and deter meaningful dialogue. Similarly, Islamophobic portrayals are just as harmful, facilitating division rather than understanding. However, it's crucial to recognize that anti-Semitism has seen an alarming spike in recent times. Let's consider the research from the Times of Israel. It highlights that the number of anti-Semitic incidents in Switzerland has nearly tripled due to the conflict. To combat these issues, it's crucial to foster spaces for balanced discussion free from bigotry and discrimination. Associating support for either side as being inherently anti-Semitic or Islamophobic is counterproductive. It's essential to approach this conflict not as a battle between religions or races but as a political issue demanding justice, human rights, and peace. Your thoughts, Maya?
Luke, indeed, any rise in anti-Semitic incidents is deeply concerning and suggests a disturbing trend we must firmly oppose. However, recalling the Palestine Chronicles article, it's critical to distinguish between legitimate criticism of Israel's policies and anti-Semitism, which are often conflated. The said manipulation is linked to the wider strategy of discrediting critics and stifling discourse on Israel's actions against Palestinians, masking it under the label of anti-Semitism. Equally, any Islamophobic rhetoric or behavior cannot be tolerated. These tactics restrict open dialogue, feed into stereotypes, and further fan the flames of conflict. It's crucial for us to foster a space that values dialogue, embraces varied perspectives, and addresses the conflict from a standpoint of justice and human rights, as you've rightly noted. Your views, Luke?
Indeed, Maya, it's absolutely necessary that we continue to make clear distinctions between genuine criticism of policies and harmful discrimination or bigotry, such as anti-Semitism or Islamophobia. It's quite unfortunate that these lines often get blurred in discussions surrounding complex issues like the Israel-Palestine conflict. Your point on how such manipulation can potentially stifle discourse and perpetuate harmful stereotypes is quite pertinent. As we try to navigate through these intricate debates, what becomes increasingly evident is the necessity for an environment that encourages open, equitable dialogue, a commitment to understanding, and above all, a profound respect for human rights. This is never a simple task, but it remains our utmost responsibility in addressing such critical global issues.
Well articulated, Luke. Our shared understanding about the need for open discourse and respect for human rights stand fundamentally in addressing such complex issues. If we consider all the sources we discussed, they collectively point towards the fact that there are diverse narratives at play in this conflict. While it's important to respect each viewpoint, it's equally essential to critically appraise the credibility of these narratives. This discourse underscores the recurring themes of disinformation campaigns, political maneuvering, and the human cost of the conflict. While our debate comes to an end, the broader discourse must continue, advocating for a balanced platform, where voices are not silenced and lives not threatened. The commitment to justice, peace, and respect for fundamental human rights must remain the cornerstone of these conversations, regardless of the complexity of the circumstances. It was a thought-provoking exchange with you, Luke.
Indeed, Maya, this conversation has been truly enriching. The multitude of narratives at play in this complex issue underscores the significance of scrutinizing the information we encounter. Although our debate concludes now, this topic warrants continuous exploration and discussion. The crux of our discourse should always remain committed to the pursuit of truth, justice, and peace. We must strive for spaces where varied voices can be heard and dialogue can flourish without fear, while continually holding human rights at the forefront. It's essential to remember, amidst the multifaceted perspectives, our shared humanity matters most. It's been insightful discussing these critical topics with you, Maya.
Thank you so much, Maya and Luke, for that in-depth discussion of the Gaza-Israel conflict. It's definitely valuable to have such varied perspectives come to bear on this crucial issue. And to you, our viewer, thank you so much for watching. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this issue and on the debate you've just witnessed. Please feel free to let us know in the comments. Thank you, and see you next time.